Welcome in, everyone. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Yes, welcome.
If you are tuning in, we know you are the learner. You're someone who really wants to look past the surface.
Hmm.
You don't just want the quick summary. You want to know how things actually work, especially human systems.
Right, the stuff beneath the surface.
Exactly. So today, we are doing a deep dive into an incredibly profound text. It's called Discernment, turning data into missional insight.
It is a phenomenal piece of work.
Oh, it really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore this massive gulf between merely collecting data about a community and actually understanding what that data means.
Which are two very, very different things.
Night and day. I mean, whether you're leading a neighborhood initiative or maybe you manage a corporate team.
Or even if you're just wildly curious about why your local spiritual community feels so disconnected.
Yeah, exactly. This deep dive is going to teach you how to read the hidden layers of your environment.
And the central premise we are working with today isn't just about reading spreadsheets or, demographic charts.
No, not at all.
It's about something the text calls truth seasoned by reverence.
Truth seasoned by reverence. I love that phrasing.
It's critical.
Yeah.
It implies that your posture, the actual spiritual and emotional state of the person observing, fundamentally alters what they are even able to see.
Okay, let's unpack this because
Yeah.
I want you, the listener, to imagine a scenario. Picture this massive multi-million-dollar community center,
Okay.
and it's planted right in the middle of a transitioning urban neighborhood.
Right.
The organization running it has pristine data dashboards. I mean, gorgeous charts.
Glowing dashboards, yes.
Exactly. They have graphs showing a 300% growth in foot traffic over 6 months.
Mhm.
They track volunteer hours down to the decimal point. They've mapped all the demographic shifts using the absolute latest census data.
And the board of directors is probably thrilled.
Oh, they're absolutely throwing a party. On paper, it is an undeniable, quantifiable triumph.
On paper.
Right. But literally across the street, a devastating and really quiet crisis of severe isolation and addiction is completely hollowing out an apartment complex.
Yeah.
And the community center has absolutely no idea it's happening.
None at all.
The metrics missed it entirely.
It happens constantly. I mean, we build these brilliant systems to capture information, and we assume that information is a perfect mirror of reality.
And it reminds me of how we approach medical diagnoses.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Because we expect the precision of an X-ray. Like, you break your arm, the machine prints out an image with a jagged white line, and the doctor points at it and says, there is the fracture.
It's binary. Broken or not broken.
Exactly. It's clean. And frankly, it's comforting. We want the problems in front of us to be visible. We want them easily categorized.
But the moment you step into the world of human communities,
Oh, everything changes.
it does. You step into the realm of spiritual, relational, and social health, and that X-ray machine just shatters.
Right. You are suddenly looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky.
Yeah, you're stripped of that easy binary comfort. You really have to navigate the fact that human systems just do not produce clean lines.
Which brings us to the modern obsession with metrics. Every organization feels this fiduciary responsibility to measure everything.
Everything. Attendance, giving trends, web traffic.
Program enrollment, yeah. But the text argues that starting your analysis with data alone is basically a recipe for failure.
Which is wild, right?
It is. It seems completely counterintuitive to everything we are taught in management or leadership training. Because we're taught data is objective.
Well, data is objective in its rawest form, but the assumption that collecting it equates to understanding reality, that is a profound illusion of control.
An illusion of control.
Yeah. The text points out that an organization can measure demographic shifts with stunning accuracy, but remain entirely blind to the spiritual or emotional condition of the neighborhood.
Right, like relying only on data is like reading the nutritional label on a meal, but never actually tasting the food.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to put it. Yes.
But I do want to push back slightly here.
Go for it.
Because if you're listening to this, you might be wondering, is the source material just anti-data? Like, is it anti-intellectual?
What's fascinating here is that the text is explicitly not anti-data.
Okay.
It references the historical and biblical precedent for careful accounting. Censuses, tracking resources, the early church counting its members.
So the concrete realities do matter.
They absolutely matter. What the text pushes against is an autonomous view of data.
Autonomous, meaning data standing all on its own.
Exactly. The argument is that the human mind If it's detached from a posture of reverence, it cannot be its own final authority. Numbers aren't ultimate. They are instruments.
Right. They're the dashboard, but they aren't the destination.
Precisely. And the severe danger is when we start substituting quantifiable success for actual kingdom faithfulness.
War mission integrity.
Right. A dashboard might light up green because weekly attendance spiked by 20%. And the automated, data-driven response is to pop the champagne. Massive success.
But discernment forces a deeper question.
It does. It asks, is this spike an indicator of deep structural health? Or is it just the novelty of a new program?
Wow.
Are we seeing actual human flourishing or just temporary social momentum?
And the reverse must be true as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You could have a spreadsheet just bleeding red, declining attendance, shrinking budgets,
A board of directors' worst nightmare.
complete existential crisis mode. But true discernment might reveal that this specific decline is actually the result of stripping away toxic performative programs.
Yes. The shrinking numbers might be hiding a quiet, really profound spiritual renewal.
Like a core group of people who are finally engaging authentically.
Exactly. But standard dashboards are entirely incapable of capturing that, which forces us into a very uncomfortable corner.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, if the data alone is insufficient, and if our automatic interpretations of that data are heavily biased, which we know they are, how do we correct our vision?
Right. How do we fix it?
The text suggests that the analytical mind is not enough. We have to move from the analytical mind to the spiritual posture of the observer, something it calls holy slowness.
Holy slowness. Okay, I struggle with this concept.
Why is that?
Well, when you frame holy slowness against the reality of human suffering, it almost sounds like a luxury.
A luxury of the privileged, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, if a community is in an acute crisis, say a sudden wave of evictions or a natural disaster, telling leaders to embrace holy slowness sounds dangerously close to negligence. How do we balance patience with the urgent needs of suffering people? When the house is on fire, you don't sit on the lawn and practice reverent observation, you grab a hose.
That is the natural human reaction.
Yeah.
But the text defends this patience by making a ruthless distinction between urgency and importance. Yes, a literal fire requires an immediate hose. But most systemic crises masquerade as fires.
Masquerade as fires.
Right. The text points to the biblical example of Nehemiah. It's a profound case study in this exact tension.
Oh, I know this story. He's miles away in a foreign court.
Yes, and he receives word that the walls of Jerusalem are entirely broken down, the gates are just ash.
Right, and in that era, a broken wall isn't just a pothole or a municipal infrastructure problem.
Not at all.
It means absolute vulnerability to raiders. It's an economic collapse. It is a screaming, urgent crisis.
It's the modern equivalent of a city's power grid collapsing while foreign tanks are massing at the border.
Exactly. So the instinct would be immediate, frantic mobilization.
But he doesn't do that. Nehemiah doesn't immediately requisition lumber. He doesn't fire off a strategic memo.
Yeah.
The text highlights his initial reaction. He sits down, he weeps.
Like actually cries.
He cries, he fasts, and he prays for days. And when he eventually travels to Jerusalem, he doesn't throw a massive town hall meeting to rally the troops.
Right, he waits until nightfall.
He mounts an animal, and he quietly rides through the ruins alone. He inspects the damage in silence.
Wow.
He insists on taking the full, devastating measure of the reality before uttering a single word of strategy.
Because he understood that the physical rubble was actually a symptom of a much deeper problem.
Exactly. A socio-spiritual collapse.
Yeah. If he had rushed in with a purely logistical mindset, like, let's get bricks, let's get mortar, build it fast, he would have completely missed the root of the trauma.
He would have. The broken walls weren't just infrastructure. They represented deep shame.
A loss of identity.
Yes, a fractured covenant identity. You cannot fix a crisis of identity with masonry alone.
So the holy slowness was required to purify his observation.
To prevent him from projecting his own anxieties onto the problem.
And that brings us to this human problem we have, the psychological mechanism of projection.
Oh, it's our primary optical distortion.
Right. The text identifies this so clearly. When we walk into a complex environment, we rarely see without distortion.
Almost never.
A leader walks into a struggling community and immediately projects their own need to be a savior.
Or a burned-out volunteer projects their cynicism. They see apathy where there might actually be hidden resilience.
Exactly. We notice the data points that validate our pre-existing ideologies, and our brains seamlessly filter out anything that challenges our assumptions.
That is the precise reason the text positions prayer, not as a final step, but as an environmental necessity.
Right. Usually in organizational practice, what happens? A committee analyzes the data, debates a strategy, drafts a massive plan, and then at the very end, someone offers a quick prayer, basically saying, please bless this strategy document we spent 40 hours arguing over.
Exactly. But the text argues that prayer must be the environment that purifies the observer.
It slows us down.
It interrupts our anxious reflexes. It forces us to confess that our first reading of a situation is almost certainly incomplete.
It's an act of humility.
It is. It's an active process of holding truth seasoned by reverence.
Truth seasoned by reverence. I really want to dissect that phrase again because the text makes it clear that one without the other is highly destructive.
Very much so.
Like truth without reverence, that is just harsh. It's a weapon.
It's the consultant who walks into a struggling nonprofit, looks at the ledger and says, you're bleeding money, shut half your programs down.
Right. The data is true, but the delivery is entirely devoid of human context.
It ignores the dignity of the people involved.
Exactly. It's clinical.
But on the flip side, reverence without truth is just toxic sentimentality.
Oh, for sure.
It's looking at that same nonprofit and say, well, everyone's heart is in the right place, so let's just keep trying our best.
It honors the feelings, but completely abandons the reality of the failure.
Discernment requires both. The cold, hard facts, held in deep respect.
Okay, so assuming a leader has actually slowed down, they've wrestled with their ego, adopted this posture of reverent observation, what exactly are they looking at?
This is where we shift from the internal posture to the external methodology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks.
It does. The text introduces the concept of the grammar of the community.
Which is essentially a framework for pattern recognition, right?
Yes. The text argues that a single event is an accident or an anomaly. One person expressing frustration is an anecdote, but a repeated event, that is a message. True discernment is learning to recognize what keeps happening.
The example provided in the source is incredibly clarifying. Imagine a community leader is having a conversation, and one person mentions feeling lonely.
That's a pastoral moment for that one individual.
Right. But if that leader has 30 conversations across the neighborhood over a month and 10 different people mention isolation.
It's no longer an anecdote.
Exactly. It becomes what the text calls the moral architecture of the neighborhood.
The underlying structure of their reality.
And if you realize the moral architecture is defined by severe isolation, you have to pivot your strategy.
You do. Because if you just looked at the economic data, you might start a food bank.
But if the deeper wound is loneliness, handing someone a bag of groceries and sending them back to an empty apartment doesn't heal the primary fracture.
No, it doesn't. You have to build relational infrastructure.
Which means finding out where people are already organically gathering.
The text calls these missional clues.
Missional clues.
Like a specific basketball court where disputes are settled, or a local market stall. The informal waiting area outside the school gate.
Places that look insignificant on a map.
Right. From a data perspective, they are just random coordinates.
Yeah.
But from a discernment perspective, they are vital nodes where trust already exists.
But wait, I have a pushback here. Human beings love novelty.
We do.
We are biologically wired to notice the anomaly, the squeaky wheel. Like, we notice the loud argument on the street corner, but we completely ignore the mundane reality of 4 guys drinking coffee on the same porch every morning.
It's true.
So how do we train ourselves to pay attention to the boring, repetitive stuff?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text leans heavily into studying the operational patterns of Jesus.
Okay, let's look at that.
Jesus constantly defied the human instinct to react only to the loud anomaly. He recognized patterns of hidden need.
Like seeing the crowds as sheep without a shepherd?
Exactly. He saw the structural exhaustion of the people, and he deliberately entered places where people already gathered.
The local wells, the trade routes.
Right. The text contrasts this with our modern institutional instinct, which is to build a massive, intimidating building and expect the community to come to us.
We expect them to learn our institutional grammar.
Instead of us learning the local grammar.
Wow. And that ties directly into the biblical pattern of reading open and closed doors.
Yes, the Apostle Paul is the ultimate case study here.
Right. Paul's missionary journeys in the book of Acts.
From a purely strategic standpoint, his journeys are a masterclass in frustration.
Oh, completely. He makes this highly logical plan to go to Asia. The text says the Spirit prevents them.
So he pivots. He tries to enter Bithynia.
And again, the door is firmly closed.
If you're a board member reviewing his itinerary, you'd be demanding his resignation. It looks like wasted resources.
But a closed door isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's divine redirection.
Or protection. Recognizing what is actively resisting your efforts is a crucial piece of data.
So if a team tries 3 times to launch an initiative and it continually falls apart, the reverent observer stops battering the door.
They ask, what is this closure telling us? Which forces us to look closely at what keeps people out.
Right.
This is where the text introduces the concept of the invisible walls.
Applying pattern recognition to repeated barriers.
Exactly. When people in a community consistently say they cannot participate, what do they usually cite?
Logistics, transportation cost scheduling, like I worked the second shift.
And our institutional reflex is to treat those as minor logistical friction, practical inconveniences.
But the text argues passionately that repeated barriers are never merely practical logistics.
Never.
They are structural realities of exclusion.
They tell a profound story about who is deemed worthy of access.
Let's dissect the mechanism of a free program, because this is so common. A church announces a free financial seminar on a Tuesday night. From their perspective, they removed the barrier of cost, but the reality of poverty means free still costs an immense amount.
It costs the time they could be working.
It costs finding childcare, the physical energy to take 2 different bus lines.
And perhaps most significantly, it costs emotional vulnerability.
Oh, talk about that.
Well, walking into a massive institution where everyone else knows the unspoken rules, how to dress, when to stand, the vocabulary.
It requires massive social courage.
Huge amounts. If leadership ignores these invisible walls, they inadvertently build a ministry that only serves the already advantaged.
People with reliable cars and flexible schedules, while entirely missing the people they set out to help.
The text elevates this to a theological mandate through the theology of access.
The theology of access.
Yes. Jesus didn't just teach access. He was the access. He absorbed the barriers.
So a church cannot be content maintaining preventable barriers.
Exactly. But we also have to recognize that some walls aren't structural. They are historical. Fear and shame.
This is vital, because if a demographic is absent, it might not be apathy, it might be survival.
People protecting themselves from past institutional harm.
Reading that absence as a protective mechanism is a massive leap in discernment.
It is. And to overcome it, you have to bypass the formal structure and engage the informal power network.
The formal versus informal leadership dynamic, I love this part. Every organization has a visible skeleton of authority. The pastors, the elected officials.
They hold the titles, but formal authority and lived influence are rarely the same.
Right. The skeleton provides the framework, but you need the nervous system.
The nervous system carries the actual signals.
You can't make the body move smoothly if you only talk to the bones. You have to find the nervous system.
And the text gives the archetype of the neighborhood grandmother.
Oh, she has no title, no budget.
But she mediates every domestic dispute on the block. She knows who lost their job, who is close to eviction.
The shop owner who hears all the news. The teen who knows the relational web.
These are the nodes. If an institution only consults formal leaders like the police chief or the principal Resha, they misread the community completely.
But the text issues a severe warning here about how we engage these informal leaders.
Yes, the risk of exploitation.
Because it's incredibly easy for an institution to identify that exhausted grandmother, and instead of supporting her, they consume her.
They put her on a committee, ask her to distribute flyers, use her face for fundraising.
They extract her relational capital to achieve their own goals, and they exhaust her.
We must honor their influence without consuming it. A reverent observer asks, how can our resources strengthen your arms without taking over your work?
Wow. Okay, so a leader has cataloged the broken walls. They've identified structural barriers, mapped out informal leaders. If you stop there, the picture is incredibly bleak. It's just overwhelming lack.
Which is why the text introduces the most crucial cognitive pivot: asset-based reading.
Seeing life, not just lack. Because if your diagnostic tool only sees what's missing, you fall into deficit fixation.
And deficit fixation is insidious because it usually starts from a place of genuine compassion.
Right, you want to help. You see the boarded up stores and you want to fix it.
But if you only see the lack, you inadvertently turn human beings into projects.
It breeds paternalism. The church acts as the benevolent savior, and the community is just a passive object.
A collection of victims waiting to be rescued. which violates the doctrine of the Imago Dei, the image of God.
Every human is imprinted with the image of God.
Exactly. Asset-based reading refuses to mistake sin's damage for the whole truth.
The text gives vivid examples. Through a deficit lens, you look at a vacant lot and see at-risk youth.
But through an asset lens, you see a youth group organizing their own mentorship circle under a tree. Incredible resilience without a single dollar of funding.
You see the tailor mentoring teens in his living room.
A neighborhood retaining hope and humor despite decades of disappointment.
And when you name these gifts aloud, it's called the ministry of recognition.
Simply naming the gifts restores dignity. It awakens initiative.
People living in margins are constantly assessed. Social workers, courts, schools.
Assessments focus on what you lack. Recognition focuses on what you possess.
It completely flips the script. But, and I have to play devil's advocate here,
Please do.
doesn't asset-based reading run the risk of toxic positivity?
The Pollyanna critique.
Right. If we just focus on strengths, aren't we ignoring the systemic injustice? Like if there's a fentanyl crisis, talking about beautiful resilience feels like putting a smiley face sticker over a gunshot wound.
This raises an important question. But the text clarifies that asset-based reading is not shallow optimism. It is disciplined perception.
Disciplined perception.
It holds brokenness and gifts together. You address the trauma with clear eyes, but you don't allow it to be the only defining narrative.
And that dual vision forces us to ask, are we doing ministry for people or with them?
Exactly. The body of Christ, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, requires mutual participation, not a hierarchy of givers and receivers.
So we've gathered the data, prayed over it, found patterns, removed barriers, identified assets.
That is a lot of work.
It is staggering complexity. So how do we actually act without burning out?
We embrace the final concept, the wisdom of limits.
Prioritizing what matters most.
Yes, because compassion without priority becomes confusion. A church that tries to fix everything becomes a frantic rescue station.
Governed by demand rather than God's will.
To prevent this, the text offers 4 crucial filtering questions.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First, what is urgent? We discussed this, distinguishing the literal fire from chronic decay.
Right.
Second, what is addressable? Is this problem actually within our capacity to influence?
Yeah, a local church can't magically solve global economic shifts.
Exactly. Third, what can we do well? What is our specific gifting?
Right.
And fourth, what should we do with partners?
So what does this all mean for the local organization? Let's talk about vocation.
The church doesn't need to imitate NGOs or social services.
No, it has deep, unique strengths. Faithful presence, hospitality, worship, pastoral care.
Mentoring, moral formation.
The text gives a sobering story of a small, burnt-out congregation. They tried to do everything.
Tutoring, food banks, rent assistance, legal aid.
Driven by guilt and compassion. But the result was total fragmentation. Exhausted volunteers, constant budget crises.
Doing everything poorly.
So they hit a breaking point. They engaged in holy slowness. They realized they couldn't solve systemic poverty, but they could provide radical hospitality.
So they shut down most formal programs.
They partnered instead. They let a legal aid nonprofit use their building. They directed people to civic agencies.
And they refocused on being a deeply trustworthy relational hub. Doing less produced a truer, more enduring mission.
Because admitting limits is not a defeat. It is the truth of being human, the ability to say no to a good thing, to say yes to the right thing. That isn't selfish. It is the ultimate form of stewardship.
Moving from the anxiety of managing a massive project to the freedom of simply participating in God's redemptive work.
We have covered so much ground today.
An immense amount.
We went from rejecting the shallow glow of the data dashboard to purifying our sight through prayer.
Reading the patterns of barriers and assets.
Right, and finally embracing the wisdom of our limits to prioritize true vocation. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought.
Okay.
If asset-based reading tells us that God is already at work in the hidden corners of a community, long before we ever arrive with a strategic plan, what if the greatest success you will ever have in your work isn't something you build from scratch? What if it's something you simply notice, name, and protect?
Wow. That fundamentally reorients how we view ambition.
It really does. It requires a vision that data alone can never provide. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive today.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Have a great week, and may you look at your world with truth seasoned by reverence.